You know, the Capitol's not the only place that's loaded up with religious expressions. I love if you walk across the street into the U.S. Supreme Court building. The Supreme Court has worked really diligently to secularize so much of what goes on there. And I do a lot of tours of Washington, D.C., tours of the Capitol building, etc. And the one place I really like least taking a tour or going on tour is the Supreme Court, because they're so determined to rewrite history to match what their rulings are, that if you walk into the Supreme Court chamber up over the top of the court and the friezes along the top, there's Moses up there holding the Ten Commandments. Now, Moses, long flowing robe, big pointed beard, he's got the 2 tablets there. They're numbered 1 through 5 and 6 through 10. They're numbered in Hebrew. The guy who carved that frieze, they have his records on the website for Supreme Court. He says it's Moses holding the 10 Commandments. But now the court's been saying, oh, 10 Commandments? Can't do that. So what do they say on the tours of the U.S. Supreme Court now? You look up there and say, oh, is that Moses holding the 10 Commandments? They say, no, that's Moses holding the Bill of Rights. You go, the Bill of Rights?
Oh, you're kidding.
But it's in Hebrew. No, it's the Bill of Rights. I thought the Bill of Rights was 4,000 years after Moses. No, it's the Bill of... They're adamant that it is not Moses holding the 10 Commandments. It's Moses holding the Bill of Rights. And you'll hear that regularly on tours. And I continue to check periodically, and they still say, oh, it's Moses holding the Bill of Rights.
Wow.
Well, don't just stop there. Look over to the right side, because there's a lattice work that separates the Supreme Court bar from the Supreme Court bench itself. And that lattice work, if you're a member of the Supreme Court bar, if you're an attorney, you can sit over there and listen to the cases being argued at the court. And it's kind of an alcove off to the side, like the old churches used to have a choir alcove off the side. And there's this golden lattice work, this crosshatch that they have, that separates the attorneys from the proceedings. Well, if you decide you want to go over there and look real closely at the lattice work, everywhere the lattice work crosses is a little medallion. It's a medallion of the 10 Commandments. Over 40 copies of the 10 Commandments on that lattice work to separate the Supreme Court bar from the court. Oh no, we don't have the 10 Commandments in public buildings. Well, if you really want to get ambitious, before you leave the courtroom, as you turn around and you start walking out the aisle to go to the back, just kind of close the doors on the back chamber. And when you do, the U.S. Justices of the Supreme Court are looking at the copy of the 10 Commandments engraved on the back of the doors at the Supreme Court chamber.
Time out. Are you kidding me? You're not kidding me, right?
No.
You're not kidding. Okay, and
there's nearly 50 depictions of the 10 Commandments in the U.S. Supreme Court building, the building that says, oh, you can't have the 10 Commandments in the court building.
Okay, the same 10 Commandments that recently was ruled be taken out of a public setting, out of the courtroom.
Yeah.
So they didn't rip off the doors off, and they didn't modify the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, what they do is they now leave the doors open all the time, so you can't see what's on the back of them. And they tell you that the 10 Commandments you can see is actually the Bill of Rights, and they don't show you the lattice work over on the side or the other copies throughout the building. Now, if you want to go out of that building and go over to the National Archives, which is a really cool building, that's where they house the original Constitution, the original Declaration. You
How
walk
many
in
copies are there?
Of the original copies, I mean, there is that big one. And then they made copies to give to the 13 states. So each of the states had a copy that they got to ratify.
Hand-signed, original.
Everything was done. Jackson was the secretary who did the calligraphy work, who penned it all out. So you've got the original one there that's signed by everybody, and then you've got the others that they did for the states. Okay. So the original one at the Constitutional Convention, there's just one of those. And that's the one they've got there. So they display that, and you walk in, and the National Archives is such a cool building. It's all the official records of the government. Well, you throw open these big bronze doors. They've got to be 10, 12 feet high. I mean, they're massive, they're thick. You throw it open, you walk in, and right in front of you on the far wall, you can see the Declaration, you can see the Constitution. You're standing there in awe. And if you'll take just a moment and look down at your feet, you'll find that you're standing right on the 10 Commandments. Embedded in the floor of the National Archives, there's the 10 Commandments right in the floor. So you push open these big bronze doors, you walk in, and you go, wow. And if you just say, oh, there's the 10 Commandments, you're standing right on the 10 Commandments, part of the National Archives.
Okay, so basically, you have to be an idiot to believe this stuff.
Well, what you have to do is you have to not know that it's there. I mean, this is public stuff. It's all over, but who knows it? People go to Washington, D.C. People, between 2 and 5 million visitors a year visit the U.S. Capitol. They just don't notice this stuff because they've been told it's a secular building, so they're not looking for it. They don't talk about it.